First up today is Nick Farrell.
Coach, thanks for making the time to join with us today. What has your team learned about itself over the last two games?
I hope that it's just been a little dose of humility, really. That the margins are incredibly small, win, lose, or draw. So, you know, even when we had obviously the early success and the results that we did at the start of the season, those margins were fine. Those winning margins were fine, and it took all of the details, all of the smaller, intricate parts of the game to get right in order to make sure that we had that success early. And when you go away from that a little bit, or don't execute to the fullest extent or with the same level of conviction, then teams that you may feel that you're stronger than can obviously come away with a win or come away with a result. So I think it should be a really good teaching moment for us, a real teachable moment from a perspective of humility, consistency, and understanding that as good as the start has been and as nice as the recognition is and being ranked and all of those aspects of things, that it does come with a burden. And perhaps our burden was that we got a little complacent or a little content, that we struggled to deal with that pressure. I think it would have been slightly different for each individual on the team at the time. But having said that, I think now it's understanding that the chip we had on our shoulder going into the season should remain, and we still very much have a point to prove as a program, that not only we belong as a ranked team, but probably belong in the top 10 with what I've seen of the entire country up to this point. But we have to go and show that. We have to go and do that. And allowing other teams to stay in games or allowing other teams to show up and deliver with more conviction, urgency, and effort than us is unacceptable. So I hope that we have a point to prove going into Saturday, and that we right some of those wrongs of the last couple of games in particular.
Dan, I remember during a conversation we had earlier in the season, non-conference play, you had mentioned you thought your team kind of was hitting that mid-season lull that many teams go through. Do you feel that maybe some of that is back with your team? And how does going on the road impact that gritty mentality that you want your guys to have?
Yeah, look, I think there's a sense of inevitability in every season, I would say, because the volume of games is so dense, and the amount of time in between them is so short that you get caught, if you like, just failing to recognize just how important every game is. And here we are, and we've only got 6 games left. And it felt like yesterday that we just started pre-season. So what time we have with this team and what time we have during the full season is so precious, because it just goes so quickly. But inevitably, when you play a game on the weekend, another game midweek, and you're looking at 2 to 3 games every 7 or 8 days, there will be some monotony. Whether you win every game or not, there will be some sense of monotony that creeps in every college program I've ever been a part of. So again, reinforcing our habits, reinforcing that consistency, reinforcing the off-the-field behaviors and everything from that regard, all the things that we needed to do right to have that early success must remain consistent. And that is what a great team is. It is consistent. We haven't dropped off by much, but just enough. I think just enough. I think that was a general feeling and a collective agreement of the staff and the players that while we haven't been bad, we haven't been as good as we were to start the season. And I think that can come through that early success, through the consistency and the challenge of the grind and that aspect of things. So with that said, like I said, I think now it's understanding that we're closer to the end than we are to the start right now. And we should take a lot of confidence and a lot of encouragement that we have performed as well as we have at the start of the season, and that we've got the types of results we have at the start of the season, and that we can do it again, and we absolutely can. So sometimes at this point in the season, having a game like the NIU game and losing a game can honestly be a really pivotal turning point for the better. Thankfully, during my career to this point, it has always been that for me. So anytime we've lost a game, I've always seen a response from my players. And I really do get the sense from this group and watching training this week and the conversations we've had that there is still a point of proof with this group, and they want to make amends from that result, in particular from NIU.
Okay, so along those lines, Dan, when you're talking about a response, how much of that can you influence at this point? Like, is that all on them to bounce back?
No, I think it's making sure that we have the right type of interventions with certain players, understanding the personalities throughout the group, recognizing who needs, just pulling to a side and a casual conversation, an informal conversation, an arm around them, who needs maybe the opposite, and a bit more of a prompt, and with a greater sense of urgency. So, of course, I want it to come from the team. I want it to come from the leadership. I want them to understand. And again, that is the reality, right? That for some of our seniors here and some of our players going into that are in their last season, there are only 6 games guaranteed. And then that's it. That's it. We have to earn everything after that. And that comes through the results that we get in these last 6 games. So I want it to come from them because they have the most at stake, as it were, as they're closest to the finish line. But I definitely think that they need to understand and that we can teach and we can reinforce some of those messages as former student athletes here at WVU, and as their coaching staff to help them steer the ship in the right direction. Because, as I said, this can be a pivotal moment that typically elicits the correct response, but it could go the other way as well. So I know that Western Michigan will be coming into the game with a lot of confidence and will want to feel like they can take advantage of a West Virginia team when the chips may feel down. But in the grand scheme of things, we're 11 games in and we've won 6 and only lost once. So there's still a lot of confidence we can take, and a lot of positives up to this point in the season. And I hope that the loss may have been exactly what we needed, quite honestly.
So, Dan, all of that said, 6 matches is not a lot remaining, but it is a lot in terms of how much could happen in the MAC to allow you guys to still have a shot, right? So how important has this Western Michigan match become?
Yeah, we still have the same targets in mind. We still want to win the regular season in terms of the conference title. We want to win the conference tournament, and we want to be a seeded team going into the national tournament. And all of those things are possible. We might have to win all 6 of these games, but we've also shown this year that we're capable of that as well. We're looking at the strength of schedule that we have, and there's some good RPI games to come. But as we've seen, we have played up in those games, in the likes of the Marshall game, Pittsburgh, Penn State, even Akron to an extent as well. So there are great opportunities and some marquee fixtures coming up in these last 6 games where we should feel confident because we have shown time and time again this season, and even last season, that we are more than up for that challenge. So I think from my perspective, nothing has changed. I think we've been dealt a dose of humility that was probably needed, and can be something that can really help this team just get back to the fundamentals of what our identity is, what our core values are, and really approach this game on Saturday, focused on just this game on Saturday, and making sure that we get our first win in conference. And at that point, given how much of a toss-up I think it's going to be in conference, anything can happen. I think if we were to win 4 games here in conference, there's every chance that we could end up being the conference title, or taking the conference title.
Coach, I've got one more, and I know you look at analytics a lot, right? The data that you guys posted a couple of days ago, maybe it was yesterday, about top speed, total distance, things of that nature. I guess I was struck that Aaron is up there in so many categories, right? Because typically, and maybe this is wrong of me, you just don't necessarily think of center backs as the fastest guys on the field. So 2-parter, who is your fastest guy, do you think, Coach? And what does it say about your system that your center backs are the guys that are eating up the most distance on a regular basis per game?
Yeah, I think that as the season has evolved, obviously, not having Dion Drummers has adjusted or impacted maybe the quality of depth, in all honesty, at the centre-back position. So inevitably, Aaron, Kevin and Bjorn have played more minutes, which inevitably means they're going to accumulate more distance than others. We should have Dion back here very, very soon. So that might help us and allow us to give them a little bit more of a break, especially when there are 6 games in the space of 3 weeks, I believe, as of today. So we have a very dense schedule here to finish out. So we will need some depth in that regard. But as someone that's ran this system a few times now and over a number of different seasons, I have always had or been in the fortuitous position to have very, very fast centre-backs and very quick centre-backs. And Kevin and Bjarne are no slouches either, I can assure you. So it's key when you're going to have a 3-back system and play the way that we are, that they can cover ground, that they can nullify a counter-attack threat. And yeah, when Aaron gets going, he's definitely one of our fastest. As far as the data would indicate, it's probably somewhere between Tony Pineda and Elijah Borneo, I would say. But again, there's elements of quickness that don't just aren't just calculated via the GPS, and the number of times that you can truly get out to a full sprint is quite often quite slim. So we're looking at explosiveness, agility, the quality of their accelerations, because it's those shorter distances that are typically most valuable when it comes to winning a race, specific to our sport. So yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of mobility, a lot of dynamic players, and again, it's nice to know that between Aaron and Kevin Bjarne, we've got plenty of mobility to cover space in behind and make sure that we're as defensively resolute as possible.
Appreciate it, Coach. Good luck.
Hi, Coach. Am I unmuted? Yeah, I think I am.
You are.
So going into MAC play and then instantly becoming 0-1-1, what does your team need to button up collectively in order to succeed in the latter part of the season? And then are there certain players that you're looking for to step up into those leadership positions in the second half of the season?
Yeah, again, I don't think it's significant areas of the game. I think part of our greatest attribute going into this season and in the early parts of the season was our intensity, our conviction and decisiveness on both sides of the ball. And yeah, it's on a spectrum. It's not that that's disappeared. It's just not as effective or as good as it was to start the season. That's my honest opinion. There are some GPS indications and other statistics that would probably support that as well. But I think it's the general feeling of the staff and the players, and I think they've acknowledged that as well. And I think that's so important for growth, that while we have gone through a challenge in the last couple of results, everyone has acknowledged what it is. Everyone has acknowledged why it is, which is the first step to then improving upon it. I don't think anyone's in any kind of denial about where we've fallen off a little bit and what are the areas we need to improve or get back to our best. I would also say that we started the season with excellent performances and an incredible work ethic in those games. So it is quite hard. It is quite challenging to stay at that level throughout the full course of the season. And as we've learned and will continue to be to learn, the game of soccer is very, very fine margins, and you can dominate 89 minutes and still lose the game. So we have bared the brunt of that, I would say, specific to the Lehigh game, where again we were incredibly dominant throughout, and one moment, one mistake allowed them into the game, and unfortunately we hadn't done enough up to that point in the season, up to that point in the game, to finish it off. So I think it's marginal. And then to your second question, yeah, I think all of our attacking players have wanted more up to this point in the season. They wish they had more goals. They wish they had more assists. I think they feel like our conversion from the quality of chances that we've created isn't high enough. But that shouldn't be something that they carry with them in a negative persona or aura going into this last 6 games. It's okay, now you have 6 games where any one of you could score 4 or 5 goals in this 6-game stretch. And how would your perception of your season, your perception of yourself, and your contribution to this team change? And it can be a fickle game in that regard as well, right? There's the likes of Tony Pineda or Luke McCormick, who maybe haven't quite had the numbers that they want through 11 games in the season, that could go on a little tear here to finish the regular season and enter postseason with a ton of confidence. So you face it head on, you work on it in training, you approach it with them. You talk about the elephant in the room, and you hope that they came with a really strong mentality, a ton of bravery and courage going into Western Michigan, that when the chance falls their way, they're going to take it.
Coach, how about this Western Michigan team? They've been really good at home in particular this year, and obviously coming off a great result yesterday with Michigan State. Yeah,
I watched the Michigan State game, and they were very worthy winners. It was an interesting game. Obviously, they've had an indifferent season up to this point, just simply based off their record. But when you actually break it down, UVA, for example, they were down to 9 men, and it took until 2 minutes to go for them to lose that game. Kentucky was a 1-goal game on a set piece late in the second half, and then as you mentioned, these last 2 results with 2 clean sheets and 2 important wins, in-state wins, I think, with Oakland and Michigan State, they're going to take a lot of confidence. I think perhaps the areas where we focused on them is one, to see if they've evolved and how much since we played them in the spring. It does look like it's very similar personnel, a very, very similar identity. And I think that's where I give them the biggest compliment is they have a way of doing things. They have an identity, and Chad, the head coach there, however he's delivered his message, he's done it well, because the players are bought in and the players are executing what it is they try and do with regards to their game plan. So I don't think there are any secrets in terms of what they're going to look to do, and I don't think there are any secrets in terms of what we're going to look to do. It'll be who can execute with the greatest amount of conviction and who wants it more on the day. And I think that's where we need to get back to our best, and we need to get that appetite and that edge and that intensity back, because without a doubt, Western Michigan are going to give you that and going to offer that challenge going into Saturday.